Hello, welcome to 15minuteguitar.com. I'm here today with my friend Ash, who's a gigging musician like myself. We play for sort of weddings, function bands, wherever we can really, and we're here today to talk about the Kemper Profiler, its uses in a gigging situation, in a studio, and how it's made my life a lot easier.
So Rich, I think the question is, what is a Kemper?
Okay mate, good question. So this is the Kemper, this thing in front of us, behind us here. It's a profiler, it's not a modeler. There's a lot of stuff online saying, oh, it's just never a modelling amp. It's not a modelling amp, it's a profiler, which basically means that they sort of take a snapshot, a bit like a photograph, of an amplifier in a certain state. So it could be on an overdrive channel, it could be on a clean channel, and they take a snapshot of that, and that is put into, so it's like profiled as opposed to sort of modelling, which is really cool, which gives it, as I said, it gives it a unique sound, and it sort of, to me, sounds, as I said, much better. Years ago, I tried modelling amps, and straight away I was turned off by it, and I thought, no, this is not for me, this sounds too artificial. This, however, is fooled my ears, and I've been using a Marshall Mesa Boogie, a valve amplifier, for 15 years plus, and I've just recently moved over across to this.
So this is a snapshot of the amps that you already own?
Yes.
So you've profiled your own amplifiers, and you've put them into here for use?
Because I'm so lazy, I didn't even profile my own amplifiers. I've still got the Jubilee at home, Marshall Jubilee set at home, but there's a chap called Michael Britt who's amazing at profiling amplifiers, who plays for a band called Lone Star.
Yeah.
And he's profiled lots of amplifiers that I like. So the Silver Jubilee's profiled. There's a Fender Supersonic Twin that I've owned before, and I really like that for the clean sound. So I'm using all of his profiles to make it, save me hours and hours of sitting there with a microphone and profiling it. I'm sure I will get into that at some point, but because I've only had this not a very long time, I've just gone for someone else's profile and tweaked it to my sort of
You don't
how
want
I
the
like
risk
it.
of kind of doing it wrong for the first couple of times. You want something that works, so that
something
you
that
can
works
go
straight out
and
of the box sort of thing. Yeah, and I sort of, all I've done is sort of tweak the EQ a little bit, and added delays in, reverbs and stuff, and just fiddle around with it a little bit to get it to my taste. But I've used the general profile based off Michael Britt's profiles.
Nice.
So yeah. Cool.
So what are the alternatives? Obviously modelling is quite big at the minute in the guitar community. Kemper's one of the options. What are kind of some of the other options, and how come you went for the Kemper out of those choices?
So I think the other main option is the Helix, the Line 6 Helix.
Yeah, classic.
And then there's the Aux box, which I know that you've just gone for yourself, which you can probably talk a bit more about that than I can. And then obviously you've got the Kemper here, and there's probably other alternatives as well, probably cheaper options as well. I just went straight, I was very impressed with the Kemper, watched lots of videos, like the look of it as well, which is important, and I just sort of went for that. And I did try out a Line 6 Helix as well, but I sort of went for the Kemper and went for that sort of choice. But maybe you want to talk a bit more about the Aux box as well, because that's quite interesting.
Yeah, they're sort of different aspects, I guess, of that kind of system. So, I mean, the benefit of this is everything. This is everything that you need. This is your cabs, this is your mic, and this is your amp heads, all in one situation, and you can set them all up. The reason I went for the Aux box as an alternative is because I've still got amps, I still love amps, and I still use fairly small combos on gigs and things like that. I definitely went for the Aux box more as a recording option, because I live in a very small kind of room, or my recording room is very small, so I don't have the space to mic my stuff up and turn it up.
So for me, because I don't know lots about the Aux box, and maybe for people watching as well, like, how does it work? What is it?
So the Aux box, what it does is by a company called Universal Audio, and what they basically do is it models the microphones and cabinet, so nothing to do with the amplifier. The amplifier itself, you go from a speaker out on the back of your amplifier that would go to the amp speaker, go into the Aux box, and then everything else that's done to the speaker that you're using and the microphone cabinet.
So it's like simulating a cabinet and a mic.
Yeah, so it's simulating what is coming out of the front of it, but the amp head that's going through it is still your amplifier. It's 100% what your amp is.
Brilliant.
It's just everything else is being digitally recreated on the bottom of it.
Great.
That being said, if I go and do a gig with it, I probably would only gig with it if I was playing bigger stages and I needed a good front of house mix, or I didn't trust the monitor engineer or whatever, or things like that. That's probably why I would use it. This is just kind of everything in that. You don't need to worry about
it might
any of the other stuff.
It might be interesting to say like how I use this as well, and like how a lot of people probably use this. On stage, I send stereo from the back of this into front of house. On this rack I've actually got a mixer mounted to the back of this, like an XR mixer, so it plugs directly into that. And then I've got I still use a Marshall 2x12 cab, because I like moving a little bit of air. It feels quite nice on your back of your legs. And also for the guys on stage as well, to have a little bit of monitor on stage. And then I use in-ear monitors and to me that's just sort of like the best sort of mix of sound really for me. I'm getting a bit through the monitor on stage, getting it through front of house, and I'm still getting in-ears. Some gigs I just take one of the in-ears out, so I'm getting like a blend of everything.
Sure. So just to play devil's advocate a little bit, because I know the questions that are going to come up in these situations, because it's digital technology. I think people want to favour the amplifiers. So what you're saying is you're using this as a head, and then you're using a cab on stage. So what would you say to someone who says, well, you're already taking a head, why would you not just take your amp head to do the gig? Okay,
that's a great question. Well, the Marshall Silver Jubilee that I used to use, and I still got it at home, it weighs a ton. But so with all this stuff in it, it's not exactly like this, but I do use it on wheels, so it makes it so much easier to get in at gigs. I've not seen a Marshall head mounted on wheels, which might be a good idea. Might be a market for that. Might not look good on stage, but and Marshall Silver Jubilee sounds amazing, but it just sounds like a Marshall Silver Jubilee. My ideal setup live would be a Fender amp for the cleans and a Marshall amp for the overdrive sounds. And apart from taking 2 amps to a gig, I can't do that.
No.
So
that's a big commitment as well. You're either taking 2 combos or you're taking 2 heads and 2 cabs and things like that.
Exactly that. So this is the way around it. As I've said, I've dialed in a Fender Supersonic Twin, which is an amp I love and love the sound of the clean sound. And then I've got a Marshall Silver Jubilee, which is one of the profiles I said about on here. And that's the main ones I sort of go to. And I've also got a Princeton, which is a Fender sort of on there, so more of a crunchy sound I've set up on that.
Sure.
It just works, and it allows me to have that sort of all those sounds in a box, and I literally turn up at a gig, take the front and the back of this off, plug into front of house, plug in my in-ear monitors, and I'm ready to rock and roll. You know, it's so quick. It's
worth saying as well. I had a little play on this when we first got here. Not only are you using your amps here, you're also using all of your effects from the Kemper, right?
Yes.
So do you still use a pedal board live, or do you just use, no?
And I could, and I've got some really nice pedals at home, and that's what I've been using for years. But now I don't. I use all of the effects on the Kemper because they're so good. I was using Strymons before, which are, as you know, really nice pedals. I think it's. I was using the timeline delay and Mobius. I had a sort of modulation pedal. I was using all of those effects. Cost lots and lots of money. And I was tap dancing the whole gig as well, which was not good. But this sort of allows you to just, press one button and I can have a delay come on, a chorus come on, a switch to an overdrive sound. All on the click of this remote. Obviously this is an extra as well. You buy the Kemper, you've got the option. You don't have to get it with a remote. So if you're playing in a studio, you might not want to get the remote. But if you're playing live, you definitely need the remote or some sort of remote to control it.
And it should be said as well, I mean, the Strymon effects, they're largely digital, right? So they're digital emulations, and the digital emulations of the delays and reverbs in here and the choruses and things like that, they're great. They sound fine. So you're getting the same thing essentially that you're getting in the Strymon pedals, give or take a little bit, but it's not like analog boxes where they have that sound to them. They're just digital emulations, so they can be recreated, and they're just as great.
If you put it side by side, you put a Strymon timeline against its delay or whatever, you'd be splitting hairs to say, you might say the Strymon sounds marginally better, but it's a matter of opinion, and
that's another conversation as well to have, I think, about the amplifiers, because something that a lot of people are saying about this amplifier is they'll go, it doesn't sound as good as my, it doesn't have the top end of my JCM 800 or my Twin or whatever, but it's the same thing. When you're on a gig, everybody's singing along to whatever songs, your singer's playing and everyone in the band is going at it, everyone's drunk. You can't tell, can you? You're out the front, it just sounds like guitar.
To me, I would just say that from I've used a Marshall, as I say, live all the time. For me, going from the Marshall to this, my sound has just, to me, and I've got, I like to think I've got some pretty good ears, been playing for a long time, it is just, to me, so much better. It's such a great experience. I can have it front of house, bit monitor wedges on stage, in-ear monitors, a cabinet as well. I'm surrounded by guitar, and it's such a great sound.
Well, you've got control, haven't you? So not only now have you got this on stage to give you your sound, everything that's going to the monitors isn't dependent on what the microphone's picking up or anything. It's your sound in 3D, essentially.
Exactly. I'm super, super happy with it, and
it looks great as well.
It does look great, but I get it's not for everybody, and there's some analog purists that say no, let's look down the nose at it. And I was that person. 15. I've been playing like Marshall amp and Mesa Boogie amps for 15 years. valve, and everyone was like, "Oh, try this, Rich. Try that." No, I'm not trying that. I'm valve all the way through and through.
Yeah.
But this turned my ear recently, just because it solves so many problems.
So do you still? Interestingly, I just want to ask: do you still own your Silver Jubilee?
Yep.
Any other amplifiers?
No, I just literally own the Silver Jubilee. I've sold pretty much everything else.
Yeah.
I still own the Silver Jubilee head, and I just can't bring myself to sell it yet. Just because I think if I have a turnaround where I go, actually, no, I'm going to go back to the Marshall, but I can't see that happening at the moment. Sure. My only concern with this, and I imagine it could be just one of the cons, is that it is a computer, you know, and I would hate for one gig to turn up and it crashes or something, you know, because computers are renowned for, you know, something going wrong with it.
Well, that and things get outdated, you know.
Yeah.
I mean? Like we're in the same way we're talking about this now. We're not talking about products like the Line 6 Variax or things like that that were a couple of years old and are, you know, it just moves forward all the time. So you worry about if updates are going to be there.
Yeah, one thing I would say about the Kemper is they're really good with updates.
Okay.
You know, you got the rig, something called the Rig Manager, which comes with the Kemper. Which you basically load your rigs onto your remote and stuff like that and save them all on there. And yeah, they're really good. Like every few months or so, there's an update, a firmware update.
Good.
So I can see that continuing, hopefully.
As long as the company are looking after you, then that's, you know,
it is all good in that respect. So yeah, but that's my only concern is a computer, and I'd hate for it to turn up at one gig. Touch wood, that doesn't happen. But as I said, it is a computer, so you could turn up at one gig, and it maybe not load up or something.
Sure.
And then you start to sweat.
Yeah.
But then it's the same with a valve amplifier. You could have a dodgy valve at a gig. You know, that may be easy to change if it's a preamp valve, but.
So this is another conversation that would be really good to have about digital modelling and things like that, where this comes into. If you're a gigging musician, as we both are, like you know how difficult it is when you walk into a place and someone goes, oh, there's we've got noise constraints. Your amp might not have like a low setting. No. We've all had those valve amps where you turn them up to 1 and they're already just blisteringly loud.
Yeah.
And then the venue comes in and goes, oh no, we've got noise complaints, so we don't know what to do about that.
Yeah.
So this is an option for this.
Yeah.
Because it's quiet, right?
You could literally, if you had that problem and you wanted to keep stage, you know, keep everything low, you could literally just turn the monitor off on stage to the cab.
Sure.
Keep everything down. You may take it down in front of house, things like that. Just keep it low. But you know, as you know, with a Marshall amp, you need to crank the hell out of it to get it to sound good. So absolutely. With this, it's not the same. So, you know, it sounds good at a low volume as it does at a high volume. It's not got that sort of constraint that a valve amp has.
Sure. The reason I was looking at something like this, actually, and I've actually been considering the Helix as well, from, I don't know if you've seen recently, they've brought out a smaller version of the Helix.
Yeah, is that like a small, is that a light thing at L2?
It's called a HX Stomp. It's very small pedal, but it's got the amp modelling in it. And the reason I was looking at that is because I'm very prepared on gigs. I always take 2 guitars whenever I go. I've always got spare strings. I've always got spare power supply. I've got a backup option in case any pedals go down. The only thing I haven't got cover for is my amplifier.
Yeah.
So if I'm using a valve amp on a gig and I lose a valve, my only option, and I hate to admit I've done it, but I have done it. Front of house, go through the desk, and it sounds awful. Sometimes you might find a pedal that helps it, but it's not great.
No.
Whereas having something like this on hand, even if you're turning up to your gig with an amplifier, I mean, I'm not saying take an amplifier into a Kemper too, but having some sort of modelling option would basically mean for me that if my amp dies or blows a valve, it's not the end of the world. I can go into the front of house and I've got that covered.
That's right. You know, that's always a risk with this as well. Like you're saying, if I turn up with this and it's the only thing I use, if it goes down, I'm in the same situation as you. I have to go to front of house or something. You know, I've seen some touring musicians have 2 of these, which is very expensive.
Yes,
but if you have 2 of these, then you've got a backup, you know. But you're talking silly money for that, and I can't afford that. So I'm a gigging musician, as I said, for like weddings and functions, but I'm not at that touring level. So for me to have 2 of these, I would have to sell an organ, I think. So not tell the missus. So yeah, I mean, that's the way that I use this, as I said, is just front of house, in-ear monitors, cabinet, and I could get away with not taking the cabinet, but it's just for the other guys on stage because they're stuck in their ways a little bit. My guys in the band, and they don't want to use in-ear monitors, which I completely get that. They're used to the old school way of doing things, having wedge monitors on stage. So if I don't take a cab, they're not going to hear nothing apart from maybe what's coming out front of house. So
Sure.
But yeah.
So a conversation I do want to have, or a question I want to ask you, okay, is I've done a few gigs with people where they've used different options, not a Kemper, granted, but I've done a few gigs with people who have used Helix, the AX8, which is the Axe Effects, the smaller version and things like that. I have noticed a slight thing which I want to ask you about. So I was doing sound for a band once, and the guitar player was using an AX8, a digital modeler.
Yeah.
And something that we found is he was using two different amp models. He was using a Marshall, and he was using a for his dirties, and then a Fender for his cleans. And I set up the sound out front, got his sound through the monitors. You know what I'm going to say?
Yeah.
So what would happen
when he changes patches,
he goes missing, right? So I would set it up so everything was flat, and he's coming through. His Marshall sounds great, but it's a little bit mid-heavy, so we made the adjustment. And then he'd switch to his Fender patch, and suddenly he's just missing. He's like gone out of the mix. I cannot hear him at all. So then I would readjust for the Fender patch. Now the Marshall sounds like this because you've just put all the extra mids back in. So have you experienced anything like that? And do you know?
A little bit on the first couple of gigs. It's a sort of a trial and error thing, isn't it? But I think it's either to do an EQ thing or it's a volume thing. You know, I spent a lot of time, hours actually, leveling out the patches or trying to get them to my ears. This is just by ear. I'm not using these fancy equipment to get them level. I'm just doing it by ear, sort of getting my Fender patch, a clean sound to a decent level. Then when I switch to the Marshall, just using my ears and saying, does that go up in volume or down in volume? And just sort of leveling it out a little bit.
So there is a little bit of finite work you have to do with this when you get it.
Definitely.
It's not going to be a thing of you just bring it home, plug it in, and that's it. It's sorted. It does need a little bit of work.
No, it needs fine tweaking to get it sort of how you want it. And then again, recently I was using because I used to use a tube screamer to sort of give me a bit of a gain boost, a bit of a mid push. And sometimes a little bit of a volume boost. And I found with this it worked quite well. It didn't work as well as I wanted it to.
Right.
So someone suggested using the morph function, which is like a function on the Kemper, which basically allows me on one of these switches up here, if I press it again, there's like two little LED lights.
Right.
The bottom one's your bass sound, and then if you press the next one, it goes up. It morphs into the next sort of on the same sound, but it morphs up. And then all you need to do is turn the rig volume up, and it saves it.
Right.
And then when I click on that one pedal again, it gives me a boost in volume, and I press it again, and it goes back down. Yeah.
And I guess that boost will be programmed as well based off of things people have used. So a Marshall and a tube screamer, they're like, you know, peanut butter and chocolate, aren't they? They just kind of go together really well. So it's one of those things. I imagine they built it with that in mind. But that's really interesting to see because, like I said, I've had this issue with people. I'm like you. I've been that advocate where I've gone. I'm not getting the digital side of it yet. I'm still a bit attached to my amps. And that was when that happened. I also did think, I was like, this is why people use one amplifier. Because even if you put pedals through one amp, say you're using a Fender amp or whatever, you put pedals through it, fundamentally that sound is still going to be a Fender amp. It's just going to be a Fender amp with a bit of a mid push or a Fender amp with a delay on it. Or you know, the EQ is not going to change. So in the band mix, it's going to stay there. So I was really interested to know whether you've experienced it and if you've gotten around it. So another question I do have about this: when you're using this, is this just for guitar? Like this is 100% just electric guitar that you just use this for?
It is for me.
Yeah.
However, I haven't yet done it yet, but I will try and get an acoustic profile. Because you can get like a nice AER amplifier, acoustic amplifier, profile that and use this live for acoustic as well. And I believe you can do it with a bass as well, so you can get a bass amplifier profile and you can do it with a bass. I don't use it like that, but I know probably someone like yourself would use it.
Well, I'd just say another reason I thought about this was I do a few different gigs where I have to do a couple of instruments. I'll have to play bass and acoustic guitar or electric and acoustic. And having something like this is great because, I mean, acoustic you can sort of get away with because if you've got a sound guy or a PA, maybe you can get away with it. But even then, it just sounds like acoustic plugged in, doesn't it? It doesn't sound like it's programmed for that. So having this would, I imagine, save a lot of time with that stuff. Have you had a chance to try any of the acoustic simulations or bass?
No, I spent so much time on the electric stuff and just downloaded different profiles for the electric. I haven't actually looked at the acoustic stuff yet, but I know it's out there.
Sure.
And I know you can do it. And I'm sure it's going to sound pretty good.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
And same with the bass stuff as well. I mean, I didn't have a real use for that, but I guess if you're in a studio, you didn't have a bassist, and you played a bit of bass yourself, like you, then you could literally just rock up with this, put your electric profile in, do your electric stuff, record it, put your bass in, put your bass profile on, and record it. And
it's just basically an all-purpose amplifier, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what it's for. Okay, so the models in here, obviously you've tried a couple of different ones. You've tried like the Supersonic, you've tried like Marshalls and things like that.
I've just downloaded some Victory ones. I just downloaded a John Mayer profile pack that's come out from the guys at Tone Junkie, and they just obviously blagged. I don't know how they did it, but they've got John Mayer's 2 rock he used to use. Yeah. And they've profiled it out in some different settings and stuff, and it sounds absolutely amazing.
Didn't you say as well you got a Dumble one?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. And these are all amplifiers, like, unless, as I said earlier, I sold like a leg and an arm, I would not be able to afford a Dumble. You know, they're sort of, I think they're £100,000 amplifier.
And even then, you wouldn't gig it, would you? You wouldn't take your $100,000 pound or whatever amp to the pub, down the road. You would just wouldn't risk it.
You look a bit silly if you did.
Yeah, you would.
I'm never going to get my hands on an amplifier like that to own. And also space as well. If I've got a Silver Jubilee, I've got a Dumble, I wish, Fender Supersonic Twin and a Victory amplifier all stacked up at home, takes up a lot of space. Yeah. This doesn't take up, takes up this amount of space is how much it takes up. So yeah, it's another thing. It's a space sort of thing as well. You don't need like 6 amplifiers. It's all in the one box.
I think it's an important thing to talk about for sure, because once you get into doing stuff regularly, if you're out 2 or 3 times a week doing your gigs, you do get to that point where all the little detail that you love, where you just go, oh, this amplifier sounds great. This Marshall from this year sounds better than this because it's got a different mid-range or a different top end or stuff like that. When you're doing live gigs, stresses of other things, they just take that out of the equation, don't they? You just need something that works.
Exactly, and the amount of times I did turn up to a gig, and I don't know, down to just like flooring or drapes in the room or whatever, turn my Marshall on, bang, oh yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. And next gig, turn up, same settings on the amp, maybe a bit of a tweak on the EQ, bang, that sounds like shite. Why does that sound so bad? Yeah. And it's just because of the room, or some things don't
high ceilings as well. Yeah. I've done so many gigs in converted barns and churches, marquees, and they're just not built for sound. No. So at least if you know that your PA system is pretty sound, this is gonna.
There's less sort of variables, I think, with this.
Yeah.
It sounds, and so far every gig, as I said, I sound the same. I've not had any variables and also like I have a habit of kicking the SM57 that used to sit on my cabinet, angled down on the floor. I used to have this little stand, and I have a habit of stepping back at a gig, just booting it,
knocking it,
and then it just moves, it swings round to the right, and it's just pointing it at the wrong sort of angle, and then the front of house mix has changed. So I always used to do that, even though I'd remind myself not to step back, I would still forget and just do it and hit the mic. So yeah, and also, as you said earlier, like you said before the video, you said about it depends where you put the SM57, whether it's going to sound really like, high end, or it's going to be a bit more middly or bassy.
If you're an inch off, it's completely different. It just changes so dramatically. That's actually why I went for the aux box, because all of that placement and things like that, they're modelling the mic placement on specific cabinets at certain places. They are done professionally by people who do it every day and know exactly what they're doing. So they're already in the perfect position, and there's no physical mic for me to accidentally move an inch off. It's all already there. So it's pretty much sorted.
And also the other thing, if I go back to the mic, you would more chance of feedback issues, because sometimes on a small stage I'm right next to the drum bass mic, which is in his bass drum there, but then we're quite close together, so he starts hitting that and it starts coming a little bit bleed through the cab, or I'm playing through my cab and it starts bleeding a little bit through his kick drum mic, and you start getting some feedback issues and things like that. And when you've got lots of mics on stage and monitors, this just sort of solves that for me.
It's the great real world application, isn't it? That's really what this is about. It's yes, it is a computer, yes, it's not a real cooking valve amp like we like, but it's so accurate, and on a gig you're not going to tell, and it takes so much of the legwork out of it. Why would you even...
I think technology now is at the level... It wasn't. Years ago it wasn't, and that's what turned me off. And I said...
I had a Line 6 Spider 3.
There you go.
I had the one.
What's that little kidney-shaped one? The little pod?
Oh, the Line 6 pod. Yeah, the little red thing.
So I owned one of those, many years ago, and for looking at it now, it was great at the time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, it didn't sound like a valve amplifier, did it? It wasn't. It didn't sound like that.
No.
And I think technology's advanced so much now that it is just it's so hard
It's
to
negligible.
tell.
Yeah.
And there are people that just go, no, I'm valve amplifier. That's all I'm going to use. And I think if you put one of those guys in a room and blindfolded them, put them some headphones or whatever, and just been in the room and put it through a cabinet and said, right, pick me, which one's the valve amplifier? I would like to put my money on it that they wouldn't actually be able to tell the difference, or they get it wrong,
So on that sort of note, as we're moving forward, we're talking a lot about how this is great for gigging musicians and stuff. Is this a great option for everybody, or
No.
does it vary on person?
No.
Or?
If you're a beginner guitarist, like a lot of people on our channel are watching our lesson videos, they are sort of beginner guitarists. You don't want to go and invest a load of money into this because you want to be focusing on learning the guitar and practicing. I spent, and this for me it's an inspiration thing, because I spent hours on this thing with just in-ear monitors getting absolutely lost in it and just going, this sounds amazing, and getting really lost in it. But if you're a beginner guitarist, that was probably just your frustration. Because you'll be sat there going, I don't know what sounds right, I don't know nothing about effects, I don't know nothing about, because when I started guitar I didn't know anything about that. You learn. So if you bought as a beginner guitarist, I'd say it was a sort of maybe a bad investment, because you don't know how all the features work and the best way to use things, and you might just lose hours in it and be really frustrated.
And it should also be said that another reason why this is so good is because it reacts to good playing and good technique and things like that. And if you're a starting guitar player and maybe you haven't had the time to develop that, you're still not going to sound great through this thing as you are through a, if you can make a little combo amp that you spent 300 quid on sound good, you're going to make anything sound good.
And my advice is probably similar to yours, but my advice to any beginner anyway is just forget all this sort of stuff. And just literally just plug into your amplifier, because for the first few years, 5 years or so, when you're learning, you just need to have a simple setup where you're not spending hours twiddling with effects or twiddling with the EQ on the amp and all this sort of stuff. Just literally just plug in, learn the craft of learning the guitar without all the bells and whistles that sort of distract you. Sometimes I think people get quite distracted on things like that, but that's just my advice on that sort of thing.
It's totally it's a common thing. We've all been there. I'm sure we've all spent more time looking online at new things rather than
as I said to you, I got drawn in with this. As I spent hours on this because I got drawn in. I was just like playing some stuff.
And it's a lot of money. Do you know what I mean? It's a big investment. If you're going to make it, you need to know what you're getting, which I guess is kind of what this video is about, because we're trying to clear it up and make it so that people know that, look, if you love your valve amps, or if you're a hobby player and you play for fun and you learn at home, this probably isn't for you. This isn't the right thing. But if you're doing a load of gigs a week, maybe you play different instruments, maybe you have different options of amplifiers, maybe you do different gigs, maybe there's a gig where you need to turn up with like a supersonic for one gig and then you need a Marshall rig for another, or that's where this is just going to make your workload. It's a big investment, but the time it's going to save you and the stress is kind of invaluable.
The one bad thing about the Kemper, I would say, is now at gigs it takes me about 2 minutes to set up. So I end up helping with everything else in the band. So I end up helping everybody else set their gear up. As in before, I would still be setting up just like everyone else. But now I'm literally set up in 5 minutes. Maybe I should get later to gigs. That's what I need to do. Turn up later to gigs. Because I end up helping everybody else now set their gear up, because
it's just so easy.
Because I'm done. I'm set up and plugged in. So that's what I would say. It is just quickness thing for me. It's made it so much quicker.
The last question I want to ask you, Rich, is do you think this is going to, if everyone, let's say tomorrow everybody sold their amps and got a Kemper, do you think there's a risk that everybody's going to sound like everybody else? It's going to become the Kemper sound?
Good question. That's a really good question. I think no, because I believe it's a lot of it, or most of it, is all in the fingers, and how you play things. But I completely get that argument. But it's the same as if you went out and bought a Fender Supersonic Twin, and I went and bought a Fender Supersonic Twin. We both set on the same EQ, the same settings. You played it and I played it. It would still sound different.
Absolutely.
So there's that sort of thing, and there's so many profiles on there of amplifiers. I've bought the Michael Britt ones. So has a million other people. So we can all technically sound the same. But as I said, to me, it's a massive part of it's all in the fingers and how you play and the little nuances and how you do things that make it sound like you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the same for every single profile on this amp.
There was I did a gig the other day actually with a guy. He was playing through a Marshall amplifier similar to this, on the point you're saying, and I played it, and it went down about 2 notches in volume, and I wasn't playing any differently, I was just playing softer.
Yeah.
But this guy hits so hard
Yeah.
with his hand that the amplifier just sounded amazing.
Yeah.
And playing this morning, you had a go on it,
Yeah.
I had a go on it, we both play slightly differently. Dynamically, it
Yeah.
just makes all the difference. Just in one profile, we use the same profiles,
Yeah.
and you still sound like you, I still sound like me. It's just
Yeah.
the amplifier's taking the rest of it. And
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point. So, the answer to that question is I don't think people won't start sounding like everybody else. Even though we use the same profiles, it's still down to the user of how you play things as to what you're going to sound like.
Yeah, it's utility at the end of the day. That's all it is.
Exactly.
Sure. So, do you think there's still going to be a place for amplifiers in the real world?
Of course. I think it depends what you're doing. If you're a tour musician and you got like a crew of roadies that take your gear to places, you might still want to use your AC30 that you've got. Is that right?
I've used the same AC30 since I was 14, in fact. But I would say the love of that as well. I still have that purely from a nostalgia point of view. It's not a particularly expensive amplifier. It was a Chinese-made AC30, and I've used the same amplifier for the last 7 or 8 years of my career. And nothing sounds like that amplifier. But if I was on a gig and I have to fit in or I have to travel or whatever, this is going to sound just as good. It's just that's the amp I've had since I was 14, so that's why I love it. But I'm not going to be super attached to it.
So I don't think valve amplifiers are ever going to go out of fashion.
No.
Although I can answer, if you went and spoke to a music shop, they might say, actually, there's a bit of a decline recently in valve amplifiers. I don't have that information to hand, but I don't think a valve amplifier is ever going to go out of fashion. It still looks amazing when you've got a Marshall stack on stage, and you look at, when I was growing up, and I look at someone like Slash or somebody on stage looking at him with his Marshall stacks behind, I'm just like, wow.
Awesome.
It's your idol, you're looking up to somebody. So, no, I don't think they're ever going to go out of fashion, but I think these are going to become more popular just because they solve a lot of problems.
It might just be a case that amplifiers become a studio thing.
Yeah.
And these become more of a live regular occurrence. Obviously, people will still always use amplifiers.
And I've recently bought, as I said to you, the Victory patches that I think were done by Rabia, who's a chap, plays for a band called Dora J and Tosca, I think it is. He plays for. But so he did all the patches for Victory, the amp company. So it sounds like to me that they're getting a bit more switched on, and they're not just creating valve amplifiers, but they're also thinking about the Kemper users and creating profiles of their amplifiers for me and you to download. Because I've always wanted a Victory amp, and now I've got it as a profile sort of thing. So I just think amp manufacturers like Marshall and things like that will all cotton onto this and start creating profiles as well as their valve amplifiers that everyone know and love. So yeah, I think there's a place for both of them on the market. So
there's a lot of chat about it, but it is great. I think now there's only one thing left to do, and that's just to have a little play with it and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely.
Great, let's do it.